additional hats, or kippot, if you will. One as a neighbor who lives across the street here on Utah Place, and also as a trustee of IFO, of the sister organization of Beth Am, which instigates and inspires Beth Am congregants and Reservoir Hill residents to better know and appreciate one another. We're all about building relationships, exploring and better understanding the intersection of Jewish and African American history, life, and culture. Sometimes we sponsor major events like this one. Last year, we had the Shades of Yale concert that had about 450 people here in the sanctuary for a wonderful concert. We have the annual Greens and Kugel cook-off at the White Rock Community Farm, among other terrific events. But we also have ongoing initiatives like a neighborhood book club, or our very exciting Black Jewish Rites of Passage program called Olam Ubuntu, concluding a very successful pilot year. The title, Olam Ubuntu, brings together the Hebrew and Southern African words to mean a world in which I am because we are, something that we aspire to here in our community in Central West Baltimore. The Jewish community recently celebrated Passover, and that is, of course, the story of our people's liberation from slavery in Egypt over 30,000 years ago. One curious feature of the Seder is that it doesn't mention Moses, preferring to focus on the people's deliverance and God's redemptive power. But from this, we also learn something about Moses' leadership style. Like all truly great leaders, I think Moses isn't really interested in self-promotion. A charismatic leader, to be sure, Moses wishes not for us to dwell in his charisma, but to foreground our own stories and remind us there is something greater and more exalted to which and toward which we all strive. I first met Dr. Freeman Hrabowski about 6 years ago when I was still new to Baltimore. He took me up on the roof of the UMBC administrative building, showed me the sprawling campus, the incubator sites where students complete paid internships, and the magnificent view of downtown Baltimore. And I thought to myself, I must be really special for the likes of Freeman Hrabowski to show me this incredible site. Sometime after, I learned that Freeman takes everybody of the administrative building. But that's the thing about Freeman. Like Moses, he makes everyone around him feel special and significant, from new rabbis to, most importantly, his own students at UMBC, who know him not as an aloof administrator or fundraiser, but a master teacher who cares much more about their stories than promoting his own. So it falls to me to introduce our speakers this afternoon. I could spend our entire time telling the tale only of Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, but I wouldn't want to do that, and I know that he wouldn't want that. Instead, a few very brief highlights from a storied career, if I may. He has been president of UMBC since 1992. At that time, he's grown it from a small commuter school to a nationally recognized research institution celebrated for its innovation and diversity. In 2012, President Obama asked him to chair the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for African Americans. He has been called one of the 100 most influential people in the world and one of America's 10 best college presidents. He's also an accomplished author who will be signing books during our reception later, so please stick around. Dr. Sonja Santelises is just a bit newer to Baltimore's educational scene, but already has made a significant impact as a thoughtful, courageous, and erudite teacher's teacher. Sonja was instrumental in the success of Andres Alonso during his tenure, and recently returned to Baltimore to take the helm of the city school system as its CEO. She hails from Boston and is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Brown University with an MA from Columbia and doctorate from Harvard. Throughout her career as an educator, academic, and administrator, Dr. Santelises has been steadfast in her belief that excellence in urban education is achievable, very much achievable, at scale. Finally, this event would never have been possible without the extraordinary leadership of my friend and teacher, Ron Shapiro. Ron is a nationally celebrated attorney, best-selling author, and negotiations expert. 3 years ago, Ron created our first installment of what we call Sages for the Ages, a recurrent program to bring transformational leaders to his own congregation here at Beth Am. In previous years, we've learned from Kurt Schmoke and Maren Alsop. This year, with Reservoir Hill's local public school, the newly renamed Dorothy I. Height Elementary School under renovation, and given the national discourse around public education, Ron and I sense there may be an opportunity to engage our neighborhood and broader community. I know that each of us is honored to sit with these eminent guests today, and I thank you, Ron, for your continued vision and support for Beth Am and the city of Baltimore. My friends, please join me in welcoming our panel.
Rabbi Berg, you know that I come here to gain spiritual sustenance, and you certainly help do that in your role, not only as our rabbi, but as the urban rabbi who cares so much about this neighborhood. But I want to tell you about getting spiritual sustenance at UMBC, because I was invited to the campus. I didn't quite make it to the roof, Rabbi. And I had a parking place very close to the roof, and I then began to walk on the campus. And from the heavens, I heard the words, "Ron Shapiro!" And I looked around and I said, I knew Freeman was powerful. And I looked up into the clouds, about 9 stories into the clouds, and leaning over that famous roof was Freeman Hrabowski. And I feel especially blessed to be here because Freeman, through the many years we've known each other, has become friend and guide and role model and so many other things to me in my life. I love it. Sonja, I haven't gotten to know too well yet. We've had some great phone calls, and I've learned a lot about her. And one thing that I've learned is that she is pretty amazing in her leadership, and her inspiration, the dynamism that she brings to a very difficult job. We're talking in the rabbi's study about how she has to answer to so many people and yet set objectives that are so important to the future of this city and to our children in this city. And one thing I have learned about her is, and that is, no matter how difficult the issue, she's willing to confront it. So it's really very special for me to have the opportunity to talk to the two of you. And we hope that somehow today's discussion illuminates the challenges a little bit, perhaps shows us a path or two that we may follow towards a solution of some kind. Let me tell you how we're going to do it. I'm going to use some time to interview Sonja and Freeman, and then you're going to have the opportunity to interview. That's why those mics are out there. So hopefully we'll save 25 or 30 minutes for you all to step up and ask questions. And Sonja and Freeman, I may direct a question to either one of you, but the other one can feel free to break in or correct me or do whatever you want to do as we move along today. And that's the ground rule. I also want you to know that there are some people seated in the audience, teachers, parents, students, administrators, people who aren't here, nonprofit educators, and others who are nonprofit leaders who have helped me understand, because I'm walking into an area that you live and I only perceive, and now I have to learn and understand. I thank them for their efforts in getting me as ready as they could. It was not easy for today. But let's get started. Let me start with a broad question, and then we'll go to narrow issues. Both of you, and answer Sonja, you can lead off. When you hear the words public education at the Crossroads, what's that say to you? And is the crossroad we're at today any different than the crossroad we were at yesterday?
Well, first, I want to thank everybody for having me. The fact that I get to sit next to and someone who I consider a mentor, Freeman Hrabowski, and you should know, just as a little tidbit that I don't know if I've said publicly, but both Freeman was one of the people that I called. And a lot of that is because I know, one, his commitment to equity for all young people, and two, because I know he cares about the city. So it's a little eerie to be sitting on the panel with him instead of sitting where you are listening to him. But in terms of this question of public education at a crossroads, and I think here in Baltimore, we really are at the crucible of that question in a lot of ways. Just prior to coming back to Baltimore City, I worked with the Education Trust, which looks at equity issues in education across the country. And I will tell you, the questions of public education around, that really center on this question, that now is a question that I think as a country we had assumed for a long period of time. And that is, can education serve as an economic, social, cultural ladder, right, and propeller of our country, the way that we have all, many of us in this room have, at least I did, grown up thinking. I had assumed always that public education was the engine and the driver of what made the United States different from so many other rigidly class and racially divided, ethnically divided countries in the world. And why that is now a question is because we are faced with a country that is economically more stratified than it has been in generations. And we are now faced with confronting that question at the same time that there is a precipitous decline in public confidence in public institutions everywhere. Right? So it is not just public schooling, but if you combine the questioning, the pushback, the, frankly, lack of confidence in public institutions from large numbers of our citizens, it means that, and I have said this to principals, I've said this to my central office team, if we don't figure out how to get traction and do this right, we will just add to this narrative that public institutions in this country do either one of two things. They either fail or they perpetuate inequity. And so I see the work in public schooling as being intimately tied to that question in terms of where we stand now.
Freeman?
Great.
You have a microphone.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I said to Sonja when she was thinking about leaving, don't go, and then when there were opportunities for her to come back, my colleague Lisa Auction was on the school board, and I kept saying, we got to get her back, we got to get her back. And there was one reason for that, and it had to do with the combination of her authenticity and her commitment to children, and the fact that's more important to me than anything other than that commitment, and that's that she's a very good thinker. When I think about the challenges that we face in education, the biggest challenge I face as I talk to people is we've not brought the gravitas to the conversation, to understand with some specificity what is needed. Ron and I have great conversations about these things every year as we plan some other activities. And I would say several things. Number one, when I think about public education, Ron, I think about the fact that it reflects the challenges in public education, reflect the challenges we face in our society when thinking about the income gap, the inequality, the growing inequality. For UMBC, where we get kids from all over the world, we get to look at education in other countries, but also just in the Baltimore-Washington corridor. Some of you in Baltimore may be surprised to hear me say this, but having looked at education around the world, particularly in those disciplines where we Americans tend not to do well, that's math and science, the fact is that there are schools and school systems in our state that are better than any in the world. Where in Howard County, for example, the test scores are better than the independent schools in Baltimore or in New England. There are reasons for that. It has to do with level of wealth of families and level of education of families. So in Howard County, the challenge, the fact is you've got large numbers of kids who are the children of Hopkins, UMBC, College Park, Applied Physics Lab parents. So you'd expect, and large numbers, quite frankly, whose parents are from other countries. If you want to see the best public education anywhere, find the places where you have large numbers of children of immigrants from certain countries. Now, it may be the islands, it can be Russia, you see, it can be China, it can be India, but there's an intensity there. That means in those school systems, you do find very high achievement. So the point is that the thought about public education has to be broken down. And Sonja's absolutely right. The real challenge is this stratification in our society. What is public education for poor children, for working class children? Because it's going to be very different from those who are privileged. Not because, of course, in Baltimore, the most privileged will often go to independent schools. But in many jurisdictions, the public schools are so good. Montgomery County, Howard County, where you will find large numbers of children of all economic backgrounds there because they know the kids can go there and still have a perfect math SAT. It's just that easy.
I want to circle back to inequity, inequality. Let's kind of break down some other issues and build up to this. Let's start with the headline issue. Financial. And Sonja, you've certainly been in the middle of it. Whether we read about giant deficits in the school budget, or whether we read about teachers having to purchase supplies or books for kids that they can't get in the classroom. The issue of lack of funds for Baltimore City, and that's an inequity issue, comes up. So your efforts have led to the narrowing of that gap, some of the headline gap. By the way, I'm a student of negotiation. You are a heck of a negotiator. That was classic. But the funding crisis continues. So tell us, from a financial point of view, where are we now?
So where we are now, we've had a number, in fact, there are some faces in the room who I know, and I know that you know some of this already, so bear with me. We had a $130 million gap for this year, and because of the contributions of the city through the mayor's leadership, the state through kind of joint leadership, one from our delegation, and I just have to commend our city delegation in the legislature, and partnering with the governor, we were able to reduce that gap officially at just about in half. An additional $30 million in cuts and efficiencies we have identified within central office that, while not optimal, we will take because it's better than pushing back to the schools, which leaves about a remaining $30 million that we need to cover. And we are still working with some of our collective bargaining groups to be able to do that. One of the biggest wins that I want to emphasize from an economic standpoint, because it has long-term implications for our ability to attract new families, keep families, and provide, frankly, what I call the runway to actually get the academic classroom reforms in place, and is not small, is that we have a 3-year commitment, right? Because one of the things I said is I don't like holding out a tin cup. I'm not doing this again. We need 3 years of solid commitment, and frankly, both the state and the city have done that. So the good news is, while it doesn't cover the full $130 million, it does give us enough time that we were able to restore $60 million. The first $60 million that we got, we restored immediately back to schools. And principals, those of you who are school people here, and those of you who know school people, there's a real tangible difference in the pre-budgets, right, the prior budgets that schools had, where there were serious cuts. Many of you probably saw principals and teachers. We were all advocating together. A lot of those cuts have been staved off. There may still be some, and so we're working over the next couple of weeks to do that. So financially, we have coverage, but we have not addressed yet the state funding issue, which is still a major issue.
So revenue is a problem, but let's give it a little bit of focus. Expenses, and some people read that Baltimore City, third out of the top 100 districts in terms of per pupil expenditures, but the challenges in Baltimore City are more acute, whether it be low enrollment, whatever. Would you explain why our costs are so high?
So, and I want to say this, starting that when we talk about the additional cost, It does not mean that we as city schools still do not have work to do to make sure that we're always maximizing efficiencies and making sure that the effectiveness of the systems we have in place is worthy of the investment. But when I have people ask, well, why does it cost so much? When you have young people, so a couple of examples I give. My girls had probably 100 books in their library in utero. They weren't even born yet. And the first thing in their nursery were books. We have young people who come into our schools who have probably 1/100th, right, of that access to literature in their homes. And what we know is that if we can provide that enrichment in other places, because other countries, by the way, are doing this, if we provide that enrichment within the school setting, we can make up some of the gap, right, that young people come to school with. Number two, and this is one of my favorite examples, is we act as if young people in our city are the only ones facing trauma. Their trauma is equivalent to kind of frontline in a lot of ways war-torn countries. I mean, we have first graders who come to school, right, having witnessed a killing, having passed a dead body over the weekend. But there's all kinds of trauma, and one of the things that I say to people is there are lots of kids who need psychologists, who need counselors. The difference is in the suburbs, the kids go. I mean, my sister's told me this because she lives in one of the highest achieving school districts in the state of Massachusetts, and she says, Sonja, I will tell you, these kids go to counseling too. The difference is their insurance pays for it. It's continual, it's of high quality, and when they leave their counseling session, they go back to a school and return to their AP calculus class. Our kids are told, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. What's wrong with you? We throw a suspension at them. We don't refer them to counseling. We say you must be out of place, so we suspend you. We don't go deep enough to see what those needs are. And when you do go far deeper, you see that we need additional resources to address that. So I don't think that this is a matter of just talking about the need. I think to the credit of how you asked the question, we need to break down what that requires. ORCIDS has shown that when young people in Baltimore City get early, consistent exposure to the arts, they can be just as proficient as young people who started off at the Peabody Institute. But what that requires is that schools or outside systems provide that enrichment, because there's no one at home who can write the check for the cello lessons like I do, right, for one of our daughters who takes cello. So the question is, are we going to make a public investment in the enrichment of other people's children that I'm sure all of us, to some extent, are making an investment of ours? And I think that is the public question that we have to ask.
And that is the investment issue. Now, I want to ask Freeman a question about that, right? We have no difficulty investing in state-of-the-art football stadiums, baseball stadiums, other commercial enterprises. We subsidize real estate development, Port Covington, or whatever it may be. And yet, we need investment in education. Why? What's going wrong here that has us off that track and on these other tracks?
You know, we have heard this in all of our conversations that clearly our society places more emphasis on entertainment, on sports. We have no problem with people who play sports getting millions of dollars. Nobody ever questions that. But a 20% increase in a teacher's salary, and people want to know, quite frankly, why?
And what is it about?
And it's about the values. It's about the values. But I would say also it's about people, whether or not people care, as Sonja said, about other people's children. People make sure their own family's okay. I mean, if they have the money, they're going to. We all do. Of course we do. But whether we see the relationship between that investment that we're talking about and our own future, or the future of our children, is the real question. You know, and if you look at the amount of money given, it's true that in our state, Baltimore is costing in the $15,000 to $16,000 range, as is Montgomery County, for example. But the key is this. You look at Boston, and Boston puts almost $21,000. Boston, literally $21,000, about $6,000 per student, more than Baltimore.
They have their own financial issues.
Yeah, they have their own finance, but what I'm saying is in terms of the way they think about those things, what you see in New York, you know, you do see even greater emphasis on helping children. And I would argue when people talk to me about New York City, and she knows about both Baltimore and New York, here's one of the big challenges when we look at Baltimore versus New York, from my perspective, and I'm in the city of New York a lot. When you talk, and people say, oh, the black kids are doing better in New York City, then, well, you're talking about kids who often have parents from other countries. I mean, large numbers from the islands. And there's a different mindset, there's a different set of values, and I'm not blaming the victim, as somebody wants to say, but anybody in this room knows that the highest achieving Americans throughout the 20th century often had parents from other countries. And so in New York, the fact was a lot of kids went to the poor man's Harvard, City College, and Brooklyn College, coming out of families, coming out of Europe, where parents didn't even speak English well, and yet those children went on and got the Nobel Prize from science to the arts. Why? Intensity, hunger, this fear. I was in Miami yesterday with Miami-Dade College, where they've got 165,000 mainly Latinos, and you saw the hunger of those kids. You know, we don't have that. I mean, I don't just mean Baltimore, but if you go to rural areas where you've got poor whites, you'll see the same thing you see as you see with urban blacks, for generations, where there is not that intensity, not that understanding, that got to have that old-fashioned value system that makes sure that kid doing the reading and those kinds of things. And so there are differences when looking at different jurisdictions, but it does go back to the notion of what's happening in the home in relationship to the amount of support we give the school system to help that home, to help those children and those parents to do things. This is one example. I've got some of my Sherman Scholars here. Sherman Scholars are for math and science majors who will come and work in Baltimore City, Beth St. George Sherman. And we've been working with them, and many of them work at Lakeland Elementary. And Sonja and I have sat down and looked at test scores, looked at what's going on to try to understand the issues. And here's what my students say. Well, we'll go over the work with Johnny, and Johnny understands the concept. And then we come back the next day, and Johnny has forgot what he understood, because nothing happened at home that night. Now, Johnny had the kind of family that had 100 books in the house, and the parents were there in that house reinforcing what Johnny had done. Johnny would be ready for the next day. But if he's coming back, having forgotten what he learned, think of what it means in terms of how much it takes for him to move ahead.
How much money is enough? I mean, if the governor called you and said, how much do you need?
Do you know something I know?
but I will say this, certainly yes for about 20%. But I mean, have you ever looked at needs and come up with a number? We see a $130 million deficit.
So one of the things that came out as a result of our analysis is that if you look at the state's own adequacy review that the state commissioned, the city didn't commission it, the state commissioned it, the state ran it, got the national experts, and what they came back and said, Baltimore is due another $270 million a year. So I will tell you, I haven't done all the figures in my head. Let's start with the $270 million, and I will come back.
Let's assume, and I know you've touched on this already, but I really want to laser focus. Let's assume that you get the $270 million. Our kids now, where the barrier is going to break down, where the kid's going to all of a sudden absorb education and move into the work environment with skills that they might not otherwise. Is that in and of itself the answer?
Oh, no. And anyone who knows me, any city schools employee that's here knows that is absolutely just the starting line. And we do the work regardless of whether that money comes in. We know, and again, you know, I remember sitting at Harvard Ed School reading, right, Freeman's work about how you systematically and culturally, right, shift schooling to promote high achievement among young people coming from first-generation college homes. And so we need to have a laser-like focus, to your point, on a number one issue, and I just came back from spending 4 days with national urban superintendents, about 10 of us who are with the cohort, and we were talking to some national leaders in education, and one of the things we all agreed with is you have to start with a high-quality curriculum. If you do not have a high-quality curriculum, teachers can sit and plan all day together, you can have wonderful professional development, but if you don't start with the actual content, right, that young people need to have, it doesn't matter. So and I'll give you one example, which is actually linked to a lot of the work at Lakeland. One of the priority areas, we have a literacy focus, but one of the priority areas that we knew, and that I knew even coming back, is that our elementary schools have become what I call content anemic. Kids come in, they have large math blocks, they have large reading blocks, and we have forgotten for poor children, not for everybody else's kids, for poor children, we have forgotten that actually learning a lot of content around science makes you a better reader, right? Seeing the applications of mathematics and art makes you a better mathematician. But we have trained, particularly at the elementary schools, we've trained the curriculum of all of the applications that give those more intense academic areas their meaning and their connection. So that's just one piece that I would note that we're starting on now, not waiting for the $270 million to come in. We're starting in that area now, because we realize part of our challenge is we have a generation of elementary school students in the city who don't even know some of the technical science language that frankly isn't all that technical.
Freeman, let me take it just another step. There are two young ladies out there who are teachers in the city. I have businesses. I'm on one treadmill. One's on one side of me and one's on the other side. And they talk with love about their children. But they also talk about the challenges those children come from at home. They're at-risk kids. They have basic needs that are Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, shelter, peace and quiet, not violence, things. Can these kids put their arms around this curriculum? Or what can we do to get them to put their arms around this curriculum so they can begin to step up that ladder?
This is where I said we need both the compassion that Sonja talks about and the gravitas, the analysis of what's going on. We work with 500 little boys mainly little black boys who are first-time offenders, and we've been doing it for years, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're on our campus regularly, and we are working on those reading skills and trying to give them exposure. And what I would say is, to the extent that you can get the child to be in school, that's an issue. The child has to be there. That's number one, right? Number two, that we give the teacher support in working with that child. Even when there are all those challenges, the child clearly can learn, but needs reinforcement of different kinds. Now, one of the challenges we face with the tests, and we're going to have standardized tests. We need to get away from saying, the tests are going to be there, all right? More important than that, you don't want a doctor one day who can't pass the test. I guarantee you, it's not enough for students to tell me they like people. They've got to be able to pass the test we're talking about. And people don't really understand the language teaching to the test. Let me tell you, having written the questions for the SAT for years, so you can throw eggs at me if you don't like it, all right? And then math on the SAT. When people say, it's a culturally biased test, and I always say, I think I'm black. The last time I looked, so I think I have a sense of these things. But here's what I would say. If I give you 10 problems in class, and then I give you the same problems on the test I have taught to the test. But if I work with you on 10 types of problems, and then I give you examples from those types on the test I have not taught to the test. One of the challenges we face right now, something I'm going to be talking with the state about, is that I don't think we give teachers enough information about what's going to specifically be on the test. And so, quite frankly, in the state of Maryland, while we may say, the Baltimore City children are typically at 25% or below proficiency level, only about 25%, the whole state is not at 50%. I don't care what district you go to. So it's clear there's the need for more communication between the jurisdictions and the state in looking at what it takes for a student to be proficient in the reading and the math. But I am saying those children can learn. They just need compassion and somebody who works with them consistently.
You frequently talk about grit.
Yes.
Some kids just have grit.
Yes.
Where do they get that grit?
You know, I honestly believe that the more attention children get from teachers and people working with the teachers, the more those children will do. We're in the middle of this experiment right now trying to improve math scores at Lakeland Elementary, and I think Josh Michael is my former teacher who's working with us with these Sherman Scholars. And we've got about 20 majors working in the schools with the teachers, so the teacher can work with a small group, the kids can work with it, because the teachers need more support to work with these kids because of attitude issues or because they just need more help, right? And what I will tell you is the more attention you give that child, that student, the better the student will be. That's why something like Orchids can work so well, or the work with the choice kids.
I may get this wrong factually, so you'll correct me. After the arrest in Baltimore, the Baltimore City schools, I think, got a federal grant and went out into 13 schools to deal with the trauma. And that's part of the problem. You got to deal with the trauma for kids to learn. And that has been executed now for about a year. Has it had an impact? And what happens if it gets canceled? What about all the schools that don't have that grant?
No.
That's a big question.
No, and it's a great question. So we are in the midst of that grant. We've actually, the federal team that is overseeing the grant that we report to is actually reported that Baltimore is further ahead than the other two sites. So we are moving with that. The power of that grant for us is that we have actual mental health professionals based in the schools. And so right now, in the past year, it really has been kind of making sure everyone's on the same page. The real full deployment is beginning to happen now. But when I checked in with my team most recently on this, they said that the biggest advantage they've seen already is the fact that the whole school, for each of those 13 schools, the whole school is organizing around the new information that those mental health professionals are bringing.
How did you pick the 13 schools?
So actually the 13 schools were very, you know how federal grants somehow go, they were very tightly constructed to be the very communities who were hardest hit during the unrest. So it was actually fairly easy for us to identify those schools because there was a very specific geographical area, but we also looked at what were some of the other needs. Now, some of the schools that were selected, if I were to identify, say, Matthew Henson, is a school that has been on the uptick. It's not where it needs to be, but it has been significantly improving over a period of time. But it's also partnered with another school in that same area that has had far more challenges in increasing their achievement. So one of the things that this grant is helping us figure out as city schools, and I said this very early in my tenure, we need to figure out not how to make teachers, principals, frontline educators now also have to be clinicians. That's not fair, right? Teachers should not have to now have that depth of expertise, but we should have enough access to that, right, knowledge base, those professionals, that then teachers actually feel the support.
Is that in the 270 million?
Yes. And it is being, and I recently had some conversations with some folks from the Bloomberg Foundation, and we were having just this discussion, we were asking just the same question. So is it just making sure that you have a person in every school? And I would say it's also about systems change. It's not just about put another full-time employee. It has to be that we're also changing how we do work in schools.
Freeman, did you want to comment?
You know, I keep thinking about what it takes for a child to learn. And I'm thinking about a boy at Lakeland. We were sitting in the group and going over a problem. And the problem said this. First of all, how many of you in here like math? And how many of you love to read? Did you see the enthusiasm with the second, with the reading? Yeah. The problem said, which of these fractions, this kid is about 4th grade, which of these fractions is higher? 1/2 or 2/5 or 3/8. And it said, which of these is higher, since the numerators are higher with the 3. The numerators got higher, so it said finally, isn't it reasonable to assume that 3/8 would be larger than the 1/2, since the 3 is bigger than the 1. Did you get that? And the kid kept saying, "That's stupid." And I'm looking at him, and what he said was, because the half is the biggest one, so it's just stupid, right? Now, what he needed to be able to do on the test is to say, no, it's not reasonable that one. You see, no, it's not reasonable that they are larger because of the numerator, because you have to look at the denominator also. But he couldn't quite get there. He just kept saying, it's stupid, because the half. He knew the real answer, but he couldn't get to the logic of it. You get my point? Now, the challenge we face in testing is that you have to deal with all that, not just the substance of the problem, but how you go about thinking about it, and quite frankly, how discouraged the kid gets when you tell him, well, no, you're not there, even though he knows he's right. He just wants to say it's stupid. If he could write down it's stupid, he would be okay. And I thought to myself how complicated this is. This is fractions. 4th grade. Well, it's that level of specificity you have to get to in understanding that child's point of view and that child's approach to life, quite frankly. He's not accustomed to just using that logical approach. He had gotten the substance, but we still have to teach him a way of thinking about how you answer a question.
And it really is this orientation to academic behaviors, right? There is a nomenclature within the academy, be it in any content area you want to identify, that young people have to be apprenticed into. And one of the things that we know is that those schools overall that are doing the best job, that actually have, and we, again, at Trust, I looked at these schools across the country, they are incredibly deliberate and specific about that orientation into academic discourse. And they help young people make the connections between their own language, right, their own way of speaking, and that which is considered, frankly, the way you have to talk within the academy or medicine or law or any other area to be able to communicate.
In reading, I think about my choice kids on my campus, and these are children between 8 and 15. And what I see is kids who can think quite well. What I see, sometimes they can think so well because they've had to deal with life and all kinds of challenges. What I see is, though, a set of children who've not had the experience of reading and thinking about what they've read and talking about it in the way we are accustomed to here. I mean, in other words, they can think, they can call those words, but getting them to the point of understanding the words in such a way that they can talk about it, discuss it, think about it deeply, it's just, it takes practice. So whether it's math or learning an instrument or reading, you learn to do by doing. And that's why I would be a strong supporter of longer hours, quite frankly, in school. I think you see that in other systems, in other countries, of support for, I mean, so they need the opportunity to get what middle-class children, what all of your children got every night at home, reading and thinking about ideas and discussing and those kinds of things. That's a part of the challenge.
We're somewhat time constricted, so I'm going to hop through some questions because I want the audience to be able to ask me questions. But I have to mention segregation, okay? Baltimore Sun runs a series. Pick up the New York Times, they're running a series. And by the way, Baltimore and New York are two of the most segregated school systems in the country. Talk just briefly about impact and solutions and how you see it.
Well, I will just say part of, and I said to Erica Reed when she first told me that they were doing the series, that I was really glad that they were, because there is a false narrative that says every school system is doing right by certain young people. And I remember I had the opportunity to go to Montgomery County and talk to a number of African American students who were incredible achievers, but who still talked about, right, the way that they, right, were in a system that still did not see them as capable and how they internalized it. So how they were kept out of the Calc BC class, right? And I had to say to a couple of the young ladies, look, you're in Calc AB, there are far more traumatic things that are going to happen that you were allowed to the Calc BC class. But for them, the internalization of that, and these, by the way, were African American children of Washington Post reporters, right? Of folks who work at NIH, right? So I think that there is a challenge, and I say this to my friends of color, don't just move into a school system because you think it's a good school system. You need to ask the question, for whom is this a good school system? Who is this school system working And there are still incredibly pernicious attitudes around who is capable of what. And what we found in a lot of Teresa Perry's work, she took a small subset of high achieving and high potential African American young people in Boston and did a deliberate kind of, what you want to call peer group or inoculation, whatever you want to call it, where she actually helped them navigate that. And again, a lot of families have done this for years. I mean, you know segregation far more intimately than I do, right? But what she found was that if you name some of those other systems, you name the systems, UT Austin has found this as well, right? UMBC has found this. When you are actually explicit about what it takes to navigate the socio-political dynamics, right, of systems of access and privilege, actually young people are able to navigate that better. And so I do think, and I worry sometimes that we see, and look, I'm all for desegregation. We know in the K-12 data that when you have economically diverse schools, all kids are likely to achieve at high levels. But I'm here to tell you, I consulted with Montgomery County when I was at Education Trust. They have a serious achievement gap. And it's not just, by the way, the recent immigrant Latino kids that are that gap. You have African American staff members. I talked to one who moved to Montgomery County for the grade schools, did all of that work, clearly is highly educated and is still finding an attitude that says certain kids are capable and certain are not. So at some point, segregation, desegregation can't be a goal unto itself. It's a lever, but I think we need to be real, and when you match it up to the data, it doesn't all shake up in the wash. There are still gaps in those places, and so we have to be real clear about what goal we want to move, what particular element we want to move with each lever. And for us here in Baltimore, economic desegregation is a major lift for us, and we need it, but I am under no delusion, because in a lot of places, it leads to just a retracking. I walk into schools and I can identify, matter of fact, and I can say this, because there are some City College alum here. When I walked into City 7 years ago as CAO, I walked through and I turned to the then newly appointed interim principal who has gone on to be amazing. And I said to Cindy Harkin, I know which of your classes are the international baccalaureate classes. Why? Because visually I saw who was there. You go back to City College today, you cannot tell. Because that faculty took seriously the fact that all young people should be able to do that work. They all scored high enough to be there, and when they changed the culture around what they believed and what they exposed young people to, they've watched that gap decrease. And, happy to say, City College, the last couple of years, has sent more young people to places like Stanford than some of the independent schools where people pay tuition. And they were able to do it also with young people of color. And that is because they took very, very seriously this idea that it's not just about placing kids in the same pool. We have to be committed to how we're educated.
But how do they take seriously? Who leads them in taking it seriously? The principal, the CEO? I mean, how does that happen?
Combination of also, one of the first things they did is they said that the IB long essay, for those of you who are IB grads, right, that 7,000-word essay is one of the anchors of the International Baccalaureate Program. Previously, only the young people who were on the IB diploma track, which is kind of the highest track within that, would complete that 7,000-word essay.
They spread it across
They spread it across, and they said, what happens if we make every student, this will go on every student at City College, and we don't start prepping them just based on who we think can naturally get there. Let's begin it in 9th grade. They rearranged their English faculty. They took some of their best and strongest English teachers, and they put those teachers on the task of what should that course look like. And now, years later, I walked into one of the defenses, and while there were clearly kids who were still more proficient, the gap was incredibly smaller than when they kept those kids in.
What do you do in elementary school?
So in elementary, one of the things that we're doing is we're increasing by zip code. What we did, and Dennis Jutras has done fabulous work on this, is we are tracking by zip code which schools provide access for enriched and advanced academic programming. Because they were falling in certain neighborhoods by virtue of just parents making demands. So in my neighborhood in Roland Park, are you kidding me? There's no advancement. People would be marching through the streets. They'd be marching down Roland Avenue and congregating in front of Eddie's saying, where's our advanced program? Right? That's why you all are laughing, right? So, but what we found was that when we placed the opportunity, what we are finding in places like Cherry Hill, and if you read, by the way, didn't read the editorial that Richard Schulman did about our choice process, one of the things that it exposed is we have to work on the fact that we are systematically keeping some kids out of the highest tracks of academic performance because we're not giving that exposure. So we're back mapping and saying, now we have to have more elementary schools in Cherry Hill, in Santelises, right? Because when we look, there are kids who qualify in each of those neighborhoods, but they don't have access to the program. So that's where, that's not tied to a budget, that's us. Sorry.
I appreciate what she's saying. First of all, I would say that in America, the highest achieving environments would be those where you have large numbers of people with parents from other countries. Let's start there. So if it's all white and from this country, they may be good, but they're not going to be what they can be if you've got, quite frankly, a number of people from other countries, from around the world, of all races there. So there's a richness that comes from that. We see that, and the research shows that. I've been studying high-achieving African Americans for a long time, and for the last 30 years, Bob Meyerhoff is here for the Meyerhoffs. And we've had a number of kids out of Baltimore City from some of the best schools who've gone on from UMBC to MIT and other places. But the fact is that a number of them do come from places like Montgomery County. And what she says is true, as I've studied the kids, as we've written books on them. And one of the reasons is that for a high-achieving minority student, African American, for example, the fact is that in many integrated environments, that child will be the only one or two in the class. And teachers are not always accustomed to seeing large numbers of kids who are going to be in Calgary, BC, for example. And students aren't accustomed to seeing it. And there's a mindset and a look sometimes that says, are you sure you're in the right class? And it's a very hurtful thing. It really is. And I see that around the country and see it in Howard County, Montgomery County, other places. And it has to do with some of the racial challenges we face in our society. When people think if the kid is Asian, he's supposed to be in that AP class. If he's a black kid, they tend to think not. Now that's just, all of us tend to go there because that's what we've seen and that's what we think, and it is a challenge in America, it really is. To answer your question, we do need to have as much economically and racially diverse and desegregated environments as possible. I will say this, even at the higher ed level, one of the things we've worked on at UMBC, with all the desegregation in higher education, the fact is that most groups still stay just with themselves. So we have worked, the first thing I say to our freshmen coming from all over the world is, get beyond your comfort zone. I don't want you leaving here saying you only know people who look like you, but it takes a deliberate effort, even when you have desegregation, because if you don't do that, people stay with people they're most comfortable with. And quite frankly, I mean, the same thing is true, let me just say, with women. I've got a student here today who interviewed me, and she's in computer science, and I was so impressed. Her name may have been Yelwees. She's in the room somewhere. But anyway, what's interesting is what she said was she was a computer science major, and I looked at her because, quite frankly, we've gone from 50% computer science majors. I mean, we've gotten up to almost 40% of the computer science majors in America who were women. We're down now to 18%. 18%. It's awful. And so when a young woman goes into that classroom, let me tell you what's really challenging. Those guys, including the teacher, will look at her as if to say, are you sure you're in the right place? And unless that young woman has been given the strength to know how to say, yeah, I'm in the right place, right? She can just say those are jerks and leave. So whether you're talking about women in some areas or people of color in other areas, people can have an attitude, a look that immediately says to people, maybe I shouldn't be here, or people don't believe in me. And that's what you see around the country.
Regretfully, I don't have much more time. I'd like to ask you questions until tomorrow morning, but let me try a couple more and then turn it over to the audience. A parent comes to you, says, I've found some scholarship money somewhere. I have a chance to send my child to an independent private school. Make a case for public education versus saying, go do that. What do you say?
So I get this question frequently.
Betsy DeVos posed this question?
No. You know, look, I'm a parent and an educator, and I always begin with, you have to do what is right for your child. What I try to do when parents, and I think it's actually a good sign that there are more parents who ask me this question now and don't just assume they can't, that I ask them what they're looking for in a school, right? And 75 to 80% of it is the same across, right? I want my child to have enriching experiences. I want them to be around diverse groups of people. And, you know, the other piece is finding out a little bit about their child and then directing them to schools that I think are further along in that trajectory. And I also ask them for their tolerance for a school that might be a little further down the line. So for example, I have families who will ask me that and their kids are in pre-K. And there are schools that I know that are up and coming. And I say, we've got a handful of schools in your neighborhood that are doing amazing things. And so by the time your child gets to 3rd grade, 4th grade, a lot of those other experiences will be in place. And we have other, you know, this is just very transparent, is I try to tell parents to be real clear on what you're asking of the school and what your expectations are of the school. And, you know, I give my kids, you know, our twins are still at, you know, our same, it's not really a local school, but it's our local charter school. And that faculty takes a whole lot, having me as the parent, even before I was CEO. Like, they just do. And there are some schools that can't take a parent like me. Right? But the more parents we have, like to your point about the home connection, I try to equip parents with these are the questions that you need to ask, and you tell them the CEO told you, or even when I was CAO, you tell them I said to ask these questions. I think we have pockets of excellence. I think we have schools that do an incredible job. We have families that are amazingly pleased with their schools. That's why you saw the marching in Annapolis that you did. If we did not have families who believed in our schools and what they were getting, you would not have seen the very diverse outpouring of support that you have seen. Do we have a ways to go? Absolutely. But because I'm a parent, I don't, you know, parents have to figure out where they are, but I think we have schools that are doing incredible work. We have schools that in 2 to 3 years, right, will be there, particularly for the upper grades. Most parents give us a try. I mean, you know, there are some people who, let's just be transparent, would never in 1,000 years. I have neighbors whom I love dearly, who aren't even breathing the thought of their child landing in public school, whether it's in the county or the city. But they're a minority. Most people want to be given a reason to have their child in a diverse, enriching experience. Our job is to provide more of those opportunities. Where we are able to do that in the city, and I can point out the schools, those schools have waiting lists.
You know, we're more accustomed and more comfortable talking about sex than we are race in American society, because you turn on TV and my God, before you know it, you're saying something that's a little embarrassing. But you know what I'm talking about. Why do I say that? I say this to my young colleagues at UMBC who love the city. And when we say the city, quite frankly, at UMBC, it could mean DC or Baltimore. Lisa is here, and a number of my colleagues, at least 30% are meaning Baltimore. A lot of the others live in DC, right? And then when they say the city. But here's the point for my white colleagues when they talk about this. I mean, we talk in very honest ways about race. Because a white parent has to decide, do I want my child in a classroom where it's 80% black? Some people are amazing in saying, yeah, this will be okay for them. I mean, Lisa Auction did that for her children. There's a number of other, some very, very impressive people have done it. Others are not comfortable with that, and they will say, do you think that I'm either racist? No, you need what's best for your child. I always say that to them, and I think it's important to say that. And it's a sensitive conversation, but it has to be brought up if you're talking about Baltimore City schools. It has to be, it really does. I keep saying I'd like to see more and more middle-class people of all races in the city schools, because the more middle-class people you have and the more whites you have in the city, the more the public will care. The public taxpayers, and that will care about the city. Now, no, people don't want to say that, but we know it's the truth.
My last question to you. You're in Congress. They look at you as an esteemed educator, the 100 most influential from a top-ranked university, and they say, Dr. Hrabowski, tell us, is there a future for public schools? Is there really a future for public schools? Should we look at this voucher? Should we look at this one? What should we do?
There is absolutely a future for public schools. And I think the superintendent would agree with me. There is a future for a combination of schools, from some charter schools, from a good public school system, because we can't say because it's charter it's good. We can't say because it's public it's good. Any expert's going to tell you, you can find good and bad on both sides. People somehow assume if it's charter it's better. It's not true, it really is. There are some wonderful charter schools. There are some that work closely with the school system, for example. But we need public schools for people in general. Because it really is about the confidence we have in ourselves and the public good and society. If we get to the point where we think, well, all the public schools are terrible and it's only for independent, then you're talking about helping mainly the wealthy, those who can get there. I mean, if we believe in the American public and in the fact that every child deserves a good education, then we're going to have to believe in the public school system and to understand what goes well and what doesn't go well, depending on the child's family background. And the final thing, though, that is important for me to think about is how do we help families understand what they have to do? I see wonderful teachers in many places, at Lakeland and other places, and I'm always saying we need to give them support, because people assume if the kid is not performing, that it means the teacher's not good, not effective. I've seen some incredible teachers who are working very hard. The more support they can get in after-school programs and from families and others, the more that teacher can do. Too often, America's parents really don't understand their role. If your child is not reading, the question I want to know is, how much reading are you doing at home? You don't have to have a college degree to make sure they're reading something, the Bible or something. Come on, there's something you can be reading. And that is a part of what we have not emphasized. We always talk about choice for schools, but I'm always saying, but what are we doing for all of us to look in the mirror and to ask the question, what are we doing to help that teacher?
I'm going to turn it over to the audience, but let me say to both of you, Freeman, you have given me hope through the years. Sonja, you bring that hope forward, and we move together, mentor and mentee, and maybe you can mentor him a little bit now. We learn.
She's the next generation, and I'm really proud of her.
I have learned so much from both of you, and I think our audience has as well. But if you would start moving towards the microphones, as I say, thank you.
Thank you so much. That